It's very early. It's 5 a.m. This is going to be our first vlog episode of the channel. The 11 is ready. I said I'd bring you some footage about the 11. You can see by my eyes it's early, can't you? There's the 11 loaded and ready on the back of the Transit, and we are off to the Hagery Hillclimb down in Shelsley, Walsh. So yeah, let's see how it goes. Renault has made it to Shelsley, Walsh, Hagery Hillclimb, and we're running it on sustainable fuel. And to be honest, it runs alright, it runs pretty well. You can see the cars going off in the queue up there, and then it goes all the way up the hill. So yeah, good old Renault. I said I'd bring some footage of the Renault, so here it is. Good run up the hill, Tom?
Yeah, good. Good fun.
Loving life?
Loving life, yeah. Yeah.
The old Renault seems to be going better on the new fuel, does it?
Well, it seems to go well on this stuff, yeah. Broken personal best time. Cracked it just into 37s, I think, if that timing I just seen was correct. So I need to verify that. Yeah, no, pretty good.
New Tom record?
New Tom record, yeah. Yeah, that's got the car moving around quite a lot, so that's about as much as you can do without an LSD, I think. I've said that before though, and I've got faster, so maybe it's me.
Next mod is a different.
Yeah, I think so.
So lucky for me, I've got a tank of sustain in my Renault 11 Turbo. So what? You can put that in anything.
Absolutely you can. I mean, essentially it's the same as your normal fuel. It's just made from different components. Yeah. Sustainable, but it's entirely interchangeable or mixable, yeah?
So what kind of components are they?
Well, they're hydrocarbon components, but they're derived from non-fossil sources. So they actually originate as biomass waste material that then goes through, a number of processes to convert it into a hydrocarbon fuel.
So that's a win-win, really, isn't it?
It is a win-win, and I can tell you why it's sort of almost more better than a win-win, because a lot of that biomass waste, if it were allowed to just essentially rot, actually it would produce methane, and methane is a really bad greenhouse gas. It's about, people will tell you, somewhere between 20 to 40 times worse than CO2.
Right.
So the best thing is don't let it do that.
Don't let it do that.
Use it as a source material to create another usable product.
Is that all sourced UK or?
So there are UK sources, yes. We are part of a large Swedish organisation,
right,
which is actually a cooperative of farmers,
okay,
that own something like 50% of the farmland in Sweden.
Yeah.
And from that, there's a lot of agricultural waste that goes into a biorefinery that is owned by our organisation, and the output of that biorefinery is predominantly ethanol. But it's second generation ethanol, so it's produced as sustainable ethanol. Yeah. And what second generation means is that the source of it has not competed or used land that would compete with crops for human consumption. And there is a big debate around that as to whether we should essentially be growing fuel.
Yeah.
But we can't grow fuel if it means we then stop growing crops for human consumption. So the biorefinery produces ethanol, and then the ethanol goes through a conversion process at a plant. For us, it's in Poland, where they take the ethanol and they put it through. It's a two-stage process, which then goes through a catalyst, effectively, to create a gasoline component, or actually, it's a range of components which can be cut to get various hydrocarbons out of them. One of them would actually be biogas, so biomethane, Another cut would be gasoline component, and then you might get some high-end components which you can actually use in diesel.
Ah, right, okay.
So we take all of those in actual fact, but predominantly what you're looking at here today, what you've been running in your car today, uses the gasoline component, which we then blend with some other components to get, essentially a compliant super unleaded fuel, an EN228 fuel.
Yeah. So, like, a lot of people are going to ask price.
Yes.
And I know the price is around £4 a litre, something like that.
£4.50 a litre. If you look at it from a reference perspective, at the moment it's about 3 times the price of standard road fuel.
Is that because of the process, or is it because there's not enough people using it at the moment?
So it will be an element of both. It's like with anything, it's a question of supply and demand.
Yeah.
So the supply is limited as it stands at the moment, and because it's a relatively small production capacity, the price is always going to be higher.
Yeah.
The demand needs to be stimulated, obviously, for people to then invest in the plants to increase the supply, and then the price will come down. It is a sort of a chicken and egg type scenario, but obviously what we're doing here is promoting the benefit of this fuel to try and increase the demand.
And there's no harm in putting it in any vehicle. Like a lot of these vehicles here today are competition vehicles. There is some that aren't.
Yes.
And there's no problem with what equivalent is E10, E5? What is the equivalent?
Well, so your equivalent pump fuel is the super unleaded, which would be an E5 fuel.
Right.
The difference between what you've been using is it doesn't have the ethanol in it.
Okay.
Which for a lot of the cars here, so many of these, are heritage vehicles that have not had all of their pipes and gaskets and things replaced to cope with the ethanol.
Right. Okay.
Many of them will probably tell you that they can put E5 in, but that's about the limit that they would go to.
Limit, right.
They would prefer not to have ethanol in.
A full-on race car, you would need to map it correctly to this.
You'd get a much better performance if you mapped it to this fuel, or we would produce a different fuel. So our business is all around designing and blending bespoke fuels. This happens to be a bespoke fuel.
Yeah.
It just happens to be one that we've developed for this application with heritage vehicles. We do have other fuels which are designed for race vehicles that need a higher octane fuel. So we produced we call it the Racing 50. That one's got 50% sustainability by volume. To get the performance out of that fuel, we've had to add a bit more fossil components. But we can design really whatever fuel is required for the application.
So the more people that buy it, the more budget you'll have for designing better fuels,
Well,
and then you can evolve from there, I suppose.
Clearly, the more people that buy it, the better.
Yeah.
Because that will obviously increase demand, and that will then stimulate supply. What we really need is for policy to support this type of technology as a credible solution going forward, not as the solution. There isn't one solution. There's no magic wand to any of this. But what you do need is a combination of technologies to get the best of all worlds. And so we need policy to support it. And if that were to happen, then a lot of the big companies would then invest in the technology. They would invest obviously at grassroots level in the actual biorefineries to produce the initial bio crude that's then used to create all of these components. And there's no reason why over a period of time, I can't tell you how long that would be, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, that it couldn't become as readily available as fossil crude or fossil component. There is enough biomass waste material available to actually create enough fuel to supply the whole of the European fleet.
So at the end of the day, if we want to carry on racing our cars around and keep these petrol cars on the road, this has got to be the way to go, really. It's got to be the way to go.
Absolutely, it's got to be the way to go. Yes, and we see, and the reason we're here today as well is that we see, these types of events as opportunities to really promote the benefit with a group of people that understand what is on offer here and how much that can benefit themselves, obviously, with an activity that they enjoy, but then the environment.
Yeah,
as
some
well.
people are driving these cars and they love. I'm a bit the same. I love driving my car. I love driving a petrol car because I love motorsport. I love cars in general. But I do have in the back of my head, this is my world, this is my environment, I want to look after that as well. So I mean, it might be a bit contradictory, but at the end of the day, if we can run it on this,
and
then we can keep doing that with a clear conscience in a way, can't you?
We are getting engaged in those sorts of discussions with so many groups of people, whether it be at high-end motorsport or down at this sort of hill climb type sort of event level. So many people want to do the responsible thing.
Yeah.
And so you just sort of feel like, you know, they sort of say, we realise that there is a bit of a spotlight on us, and some people will look at us as if we're engaged in what might be considered a bit of a frivolous activity and a bit of a dirty activity. So we've, you know, to keep this going, something that we really have a passion for and enjoy, we'll do the responsible thing and make it sustainable, and we're prepared to pay for that as well.
We've got to work with each other.
Absolutely, and the one thing is that, and you know, we're really open and honest about it, that we do have to say is that sustainability does come at a cost. In the initial stages, there's no reason why that can't become, whether it will actually be absolute parity with your fossil fuels, I can't say. But there's no reason why it can't become so much more affordable that it could become mainstream.
So at the end of the day, that's what we need to do. We need to keep going on some sustainable fuel, carry on driving our cars.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to get back on the hill now in my sustain powered Renault.
Listen.